I would like to start with by a raise of hands. And this time is the question, who of you in the room is allergic to the word holistic? See at least one. See how hard I have to work, 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's easy crowd. I have to admit, for myself, I was a long time when someone was saying holistic, it felt a little bit itchy, like it's too broad, too big, too less concrete, too less actionable. But a few months ago, I was sitting down with a colleague, Mark van der Wallen. He's more into Java. And we were talking about the subject for the presentation as well, also for QX Day, where we presented together. And we both agreed that we wanted to make more impact within IT and within sustainable IT. So the year before, we also presented both different presentations about things you can do as a developer, like really practical tips, like programming tips. And I think that's good. But still, if you look at the numbers, I had to believe that we should do more, that we also maybe need to take a step back and see what we can do more as an industry as well, to make sure that we are actually going to make steps forward in making the industry and the things that we are doing as well more sustainable. So the last time I presented this, it was with a room full with clients and a lot of managers, and it was really high over. I wanted to make it a little bit more concrete, so I've added some developer tips and tricks and things that you can do as well. So we're not going only to talk about the principles of and those kind of things. We're also going to give some concrete examples. And a little bit also crunching the numbers of how many resources, for example, we are wasting within our industry. So, how many Tesla Model Ys can you actually buy if we would stop wasting resources in cloud worldwide alone? Millions? Yeah. A specific number in millions, or maybe you're close or not? 2 million. Anyone going up, going down? 1 million? I did the math, of course, already. Gartner predicted that this year would be around $600 billion of cloud spent, and money spent in cloud for the whole year worldwide. You have also Flexera. They always release the state of the cloud report, and they predict that in 2023 there would be around 28% of that being waste. And both of the numbers are increasing. So in 2022, you had $490 billion of cloud spent, and there was 22% waste. Now we are looking at 600 billion of cloud spent, and we are having now 28% of estimated waste. So that's the waste we're actually aware of. Yeah, there might also be waste that we are not aware of yet. And so the numbers are quite big. A Tesla Model Y is actually costing 47,000 euros. So I have to convert it to dollars to make a good calculation. It's nearly $50,000. So there would be around 3.3 million Teslas that you can buy if we would not waste resources in IT. We have about 552,000 IT professionals in the Netherlands, estimated. So we could all own about 6 Tesla Model Ys if we would stop wasting and basically solve a world problem within our country. So it's huge, and we're only growing in those numbers. We're of course not going to talk about cloud alone, but also more about sustainability in IT as well. A little bit of an introduction. This is a really big picture of myself, costs a lot of megabytes and going over the line. But I'm the front-end lead within Society. They now call it subject matter expert. And I'm working at clients. I worked at ICS, Rabobank, and already for 4 years at the Dutch police. And I'm doing that for Society, so we're also standing there with the booth. So if you want to join or talk to us later on, we're standing there somewhere in the middle of the hallway. I did a little bit of a scan how sustainable my own website was, and I already gave a little bit of a hint that it was not really optimized that well. And I found out that my own website was emitting about 5 grams of CO2 per page view. Now I only have a few visitors a month, so it's not the huge numbers, but at the same time, this is me trying to be sustainable, not knowing if the actions that I'm taking are actually sustainable or not. So the choices that I'm making were not sustainable at all, and I was emitting lots of CO2 that I wasn't even aware of. So if you do the numbers for 10,000 page views, it would take me a couple of years, but for 10,000 page views, that would be the equivalent of energy used to drive an electrical car from here to Greece, and then back again, and then do the whole road trip all over again. So 2 road trips to Greece would be the same equivalent for all the energy used for everything needed to serve my webpage for 10,000 page views. Of course, had to do something about it, so now I have green text, it's more sustainable as well. A little bit smaller image. It's all helping, the small bits and bytes. And under the hood, I added this slide as well, I know there were developers here. I moved from Angular, an old version, Angular 7, to Vue and Nuxt 3. And I went from Bootstrap to Tailwind. So what I was actually doing, I could now use static site generation, so it's all static files that was deploying. I could use the Vue virtual DOM, so less memory usage and quicker rendering. And Nuxt was also added tree shaking, so the bundle size was way smaller than when I was completely shipping the whole version of Angular. Not saying that Angular is inherently not sustainable, but for my use case and also not being optimized, it was not the best choice. And also with Tailwind, I went from a lot of pre-made components shipped with Bootstrap to basically utility classes, so a few kilobytes of utility classes. So this all helped a lot. I did the scan again, and I went from 5 grams of CO2 towards 0.06. You can calculate it percentage-wise, it's a huge number, but yeah, it's a big difference making choices based upon insights, basically. If you want to know more about this, about the choices that I made, I presented earlier about this as well, and I have on my website a little bit of a case study about this, so you can read more at my own website. I've only added one slide about climate change because I think we all agree that climate change is happening today. It's moving quicker than some of the most extreme predictions, for example, with ocean temperatures, and we are seeing that in Europe, parts of Europe are actually hotspots of climate change. So I think there is something that we need to do, and we first need to look at, I think, the definition of sustainability and why it's important. And for me, this is something that is really personal to me as well, why I actually started this journey and why I'm presenting now today as well. But the definition of the UN, the United Nations in 1987, it's an old quote, but it's still relevant today, I believe, is that sustainability is basically meeting the needs of the present without compromising the needs of the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. And for me, the moment that I was really thinking about what choices am I really making was the moment like in 2020, 3 years ago in September, the 9th of September, my daughter Lisa was born. And I still remember the moment when you were driving back in the car and looking at your own child basically and saying like, what future are they going to have? Like, what am I doing basically to make sure the future of now my 2 children is basically as bright as I want it to be? So I was thinking, I'm interested in sustainability. I try to do things in my personal life to make personal and sustainable choices, but can I do more to make more impact? So that was the moment that I was basically starting to think like what I'm doing at work and what can we do and how much are we emitting. A little bit of a definition. After that, green software, we are talking about green software and we're talking about sustainable IT. Those are really closely matched, but at the same time they mean different things as well. You can, for example, compare it with a light bulb. When we're talking about green, we are basically saying that the thing we are building is greener compared to the alternative. So if you are changing a traditional light bulb and you're changing that with a LED light bulb, the LED is more greener compared to the alternative, so LED is green, a green solution. But at the same time, if you're in your own home, basically throwing all the LED bulbs you can buy and all the smart LED things that you can completely decorate your whole room with LEDs, then it might not be sustainable because you're using a lot of products that might not be necessary. So a product by itself can be green, but the way you are using it and the amount and the whole life cycle of it can be sustainable or not. So I often like to talk about green software, but we want also to move towards sustainable IT because that's the end goal. With only green software, you are not really going to the end goal as well. And looking a little bit back at what is our share in climate change, I think as an industry, we are not really doing that great. We are, with energy consumption, the third largest consumer of the world. And with CO2 emissions, you can basically calculate Spain, Italy, France, and Portugal. You have to combine all of those to get the same amount of emissions compared to like what we are emitting within the whole industry. And at the same time, it's not really that visible. So when you are watching a movie or when you are streaming something or when you are downloading or emailing, it's not really visible that all these things do have some sort of a negative side impact. But if you take us as an industry, it's really big. And you often hear that as well, like at the company they're saying like, oh yeah, but the IT is only 2 or 3% of our whole emissions, so it's not accounting everything with each other, and now also with all the cloud that we now can use. You can basically say that we are, as an industry, a huge energy consumer and also polluting a lot of emissions. So now talking about the green software principles, and they're brought to us by the Green Software Foundation. And basically the Green Software Foundation is an organization where a lot of big tech organizations and also enterprise organizations are combined to make sure that we are not just talking about things that we could do or the definitions of things, but for example, Google, Microsoft, GitHub are like bigger tech companies that joined the Green Software Foundation, the Linux Foundation as well. And you have also all enterprise organizations that are also part of the Green Software Foundation, and they open source basically everything that they are doing. So also projects like that you can just check out with GitHub. Everything is on GitHub, but also these kind of images. And the Green Software Principles, basically they're saying 2 times efficiency. They are not going to say we are not going to consume energy at all. And they are also not going to say we are not going to use hardware at all. Because basically when you are in IT, you need hardware to run your solution on, and you need energy to run your solution. But you want to make sure that you're doing that as efficient as possible, and you are basically using the least amount of energy possible and the least amount of the whole life cycle of hardware. And that's why they are also saying the amount of embodied carbon. And basically we are a lot of times really focused on the use of a product. So if you have a laptop and you're running your laptop, it's costing you a power, and the power is basically a part of the energy consumption. But for example, Microsoft, they calculated with the Surface laptop that you actually need to use the Surface laptop for about 12 years to get the same amount of emissions compared to only the manufacturing of the device itself. So the manufacturing, and also throwing it away later on, but the manufacturing part of creating that specific device is already polluting that much that you need to use the device for 12 years to match that only. Most of the people are not really using a device for 12 years. So the best thing that you can basically do is try to expand the life cycle. And you can do that within IT as well. For example, you can make sure that the software that we are building is basically able to run on all the devices as well, to make sure people don't have to throw away the devices which are still fine, but not able to support it to run all the latest software on. And as a hardware industry, of course, you need to make devices that are more able to last longer. And carbon awareness. is basically saying that you need to do more when the electricity is clean and less when it's dirty. Because I hear a lot of people saying like, oh, well, we are on some sort of a cloud solution and it's certified green. So you can basically use it and it's all green, so it's not accounting for the emissions that we are doing. And while it's maybe not accounting for the emissions that you're doing, but basically there's only a limited amount of green electricity available. And by running something in the middle of the night when there is basically no solar power available, then you are basically using a lot of dirty energy. So carbon awareness, if you are building that into your application, then you are actually making sure that you are using more green energy. This is a little bit about some data about embodied carbon. And here you see the black bar is basically saying how much energy is used for manufacturing, and the blue bar is saying how much is basically to use it. And you see, especially with the smartphone, is so small and it's so optimized that basically the usage part of using the smartphone, it's not consuming that much power. Like this small of a battery can already last you for a whole day. So you can really try to optimize a smartphone to make sure you are saving a little bit of power with the screen or those kind of things. But the most energy is actually spent by creating the whole smartphone. So making sure that you are using your smartphone longer is one of the best things that you can do if you want to have less embodied carbon. I was talking about carbon awareness, and here you see the 3 pillars of carbon awareness. You see location shifting, time shifting, and demand shaping. I was actually wondering, you here in the audience, who is already doing this personally at home? For example, when are you running the dishwasher? Are you doing that on a moment when there's more green electricity available? I see quite some hands already. Oh, that's promising. Nice. Because I think if you are doing this in your personal life, and it can, for example, you can do that with an app like Van de Bron, if you are a customer there. You can just check and see like, oh, between 1 and 4, it's the best time to run your laundry machine, for example. You can already do a lot to make sure you're more using the peaks of the energy grid. And especially in the summer, you see that for a whole period of time, it's just over 100%. So basically, we are throwing away a lot of green energy. And if you then would do your laundry in the middle of the night when there's 0 solar power available, then you're basically making sure that you're using more dirty energy. You can also use location shifting. So let's say you have a solution that's running constantly, or you have to run it in the middle of the night. There are APIs also brought to you by the Green Software Foundation, and those APIs are basically making sure that you can calculate which energy grid is the greenest. So it will just give a score, percentage-based score, and you can just go like, oh, in America you can now best run the application, or the update, or the, I don't know, crunching all the numbers, or doing some AI modeling or predictions. And you can now do that the best in America because there's now the greenest solar grid, or the greenest energy grid, sorry. The last pillar is demand shaping. And the thing what you're doing can be really good being compared with, for example, the eco mode on your laundry machine. So for example, when you are running your laundry machine overday and there's a lot of green energy available, you can just run it at full speed. You might be able to do about 3 or 4 laundries in about a few hours. So you can make optimal use of the amount of green energy available. But if you're saying like, no, I really need to basically run my laundry machine in the middle of the night because I need to have the washings done by tomorrow, then you can use an eco mode. So you're still using it at the moment of time when the electricity grid is not as green. But at the same time, using the eco mode, you are taking longer over the whole process, but at the same time not using that much energy. We wanted to add a little bit more about the approach. What is actually the holistic approach? So we talked now a little bit about the principles, and I think we should combine this with a few mind shifts as well. Some mind shifts that we need to our industry. And I think holistically, if we are talking holistically, it also goes without saying that we want to in absolute numbers, try to lower the amount of emissions. So we cannot just say like, oh, we moved all our on-premise hosting towards some partner or some supplier, and it moves everything of our emissions out of our scope, out of our site, basically. So we are now greener because our company is consuming less. We need to really make sure that also the partners and the supplier of the partners on all those 3 different scopes are basically consuming less. So one of the first mind shifts is we need to make the green choice at work. And I think that was something that was already explaining, like what can you do when you're walking into the office to make more greener choices, like the servers that are running non-stop, those kind of things. And I know that I'm speaking with a lot of people, also managers within the clients that I'm working for, sometimes where I'm presenting, and they're like completely busy with optimizing everything in their personal life, making their whole house as sustainable as possible. And at the same time, they walk into the office and they have just 24/7 turned on everything and not optimizing at all. And I think the impact that you can basically make by making green choices at work is bigger than the impact that you can make by making green choices at home. And for that, you need first, of course, to be aware that you can make choices and that those choices do have an impact. Create some insights, like a baseline, like how many metric tons of CO2 are we now emitting. And from those baselines, you can take action. And it's best to make it sustainable action, of course. So not something that you are doing once and in a few months it's already disappearing again, but some action that is sustainable, ongoing. And something that you could do is, and we call that light switch operations. And last time when I was presenting at QX Day, we had the partner Rabobank as well on stage, and they were telling about light switch operations and how it saved them a lot of energy and also metric tons CO2. And basically, with the light switch, you know that if you turn it on, you know the light switch, the light will go on. You also know that you can just turn it off because, whenever you need it, you can just turn the lights back on. But the same does not really go for servers. A lot of people are afraid to turn off a server because you never know if everything comes up when you put the power on again. So when you are making your whole cloud architecture or your whole server structure more resilient, basically, and more you are basically testing that everything you are doing, if you turn it back on, it will just come up and all the systems will work again. Then you can basically treat it like a light switch. So if you leave the office, you turn the light switch off. If you come back to the office, you turn the light switch on. You can do that in the weekends as well. For a client that I'm working for, they are basically, for example, having a pipeline, and the pipeline is doing a check on all the tests. So it's taking about 1.5 hours to complete the whole pipeline, running all the tests. And they're also doing that in the weekends and at night. And I'm pretty sure that no one in the middle of the night of a Saturday night is basically going to check the results of the pipeline, because we're only taking action when we're logging in on the Monday. So we can just switch it off in the weekends, basically. And it will already help a lot of energy usage. We can save a lot there. Another action that you could take, and this is a little bit of promotion for quality for DevOps teams, but within Society we are really well known for TMAP, something within the testing area of our company, and we've basically revamped that to quality for DevOps teams, as building quality products is more than only testing. And within this book we basically added an addition to the ISO standard, the ISO 25010, quality in use, and it's being used by a lot of architects basically to write non-functional requirements. And some of those requirements do have some sort of a paragraph on sustainability, like freedom from risk, is saying like, climate change is some sort of a risk, so you need to be environmentally sustainable to mitigate any sort of risk. But we thought it deserved a whole paragraph basically on itself. So we added sustainability as an extension on that ISO norm, and it could help when you are writing non-functional requirements for your application to make those, again, more sustainable. The second mind shift is that we need to move beyond quick fixes and isolated initiatives. And while I think every initiative to make your application more greener is good, but we are seeing the numbers increasing. So we need to do basically more than only having a few tweaks here and there, saving some metric tons here and there. We need to basically go from the insight that we are creating with dashboarding, for example, measuring how the actions that we are taking are basically making sure that the usage is of the amount of energy and amount of carbon emissions is lowering, so that you can basically take concrete actions and that make those concrete actions sustainable as well. So every sustainable initiative is of course really good, but make sure that we are moving beyond that as well. And I think this is one of the more important ones, and that's basically going back to the era where we still had scarcity within IT. And I think that we really lost a little bit of scarcity in the last few years, and I can demonstrate that looking at, for example, Hotmail and Gmail. And Hotmail was introduced in 1996, and we had about 2 megabytes of storage. And I know at the time I had a Hotmail account as well that you shouldn't look at all the. This is just a screenshot I grabbed from the internet. I made sure that my inbox was really tidy because you only had 2 megabytes of room, and you see really prominently also the size of your emails. So if there was a big email, you just read it and then throw it away to make sure your inbox was staying within the 2 megabytes. Then suddenly came Google, and they introduced Gmail in 2004, and they had about 1 gigabyte of storage. And they were basically saying you need to tag your emails and not trash it. Just rely on the search engine and just accumulate as much as emails as possible, because basically there is no scarcity anymore. You can just have all the emails you want, and if you look for something, just look for it. And the whole idea that you have to clean up your inbox, and also what we're now seeing with photos, for example, the idea that you have to select the one photo that is the most, the best photo basically, it's really thrown away because it will just accumulate all the photos you have, and by AI selecting the best photos for you. So we are losing, as a consumer, we are losing really the track of scarcity, and we are just throwing more and more data into our solutions. Another action that you could take is displaying the environmental costs within your application. And I think this is a really nice example from that. You can, it's not on by default, I guess, but you can turn it on within Google Maps. And then it's basically saying you can choose if you have an electrical car, if you have a diesel or a fuel-driven car. And basically it will tell you which one is the most fuel efficient or is consuming the least amount of electricity. And by doing so, you basically put the environmental cost of the choices that you are making at the consumer as well. Looking at cloud, we already crunched a little bit of the numbers of that $600 billion cloud spend. And I think I also saw that in the last few years. I work now for 8 years at Society. And the first client that I came to, basically we only had 5 servers. And if you wanted to add another server, because there were more and more teams coming, they all wanted to claim some space on the server. If you wanted to add another server, basically you had to convince some IT manager, and that IT manager has to go through a whole process to buy a server and move that on-premise and make sure it's all working with the whole IT department. So we had about 5 or 6 teams working at the product, and we were managing with 2 or 3 test environments, 1 acceptance, 1 production environment, and that was about it, and it was kind of working well. Then I went to organizations that also were introducing cloud solutions like Pivotal Cloud Foundry, or just solutions where you can really easily scale up. And suddenly there were developers that have 2 or 3 testing environments per person. So within a team there were already like 20 or 30 different testing environments just for the one story separate environment. And it was so easy to upscale that it's also really hard to limit. And it's also something that Flexera is saying within their State of the Cloud report, is that companies have more and more trouble making sure that the cloud solutions that they are bringing are basically within budget, and it's growing. Something the Green Software Foundation is also saying is that if you want to increase your hardware efficiency, things you have to stop doing is over-provisioning. So really accounting for the peaks that you could expect, and by that putting a lot of servers into the mix, just in case that one day in the year that you might actually need all of those resources. If you're really making full use of cloud solutions, then you could also move all that to one instance basically. And the moment you need to scale up, you can scale up anyway, trusting the possibilities of the cloud. But you see with a lot of organizations that they are just really cautious. They don't want to run out of storage. They don't want to run out of memory, those kind of things. So they are accumulating a lot of resources, but they are underutilized and thus also not as efficient. So something that you could do is basically make sure that you are lowering, basically introducing scarcity again into cloud solutions. So you can do that by metric ton. If you have really good dashboarding, you can calculate that. But you can also just say, like, now we have 30 different environments. Next year we'll only have 25. And so you can lower it without completely knowing, the amount of energy that you're going to save, but making sure that the numbers are going lower. It's also making sure that you have to be a little bit more creative. I know organizations where if the application is running too slow, they just add a new server and make sure it's a bit quicker. But most of the developers know there are some root performance issues, and you can either just solve those root performance issues, or you can just throw more resources at it. And it's really easy to throw more resources at it because it's fixing the problem, but it will come back and it will come back and it will come back over and over again. So it's also a question about being reactive or being proactive. By introducing scarcity into our solutions, you can already know that the scarcity is going to appear and that you have to do something about it to react on it. If you are going to wait until you have to make actions or you have to budgetize basically your spending, then you are reactive and then you have to scale down on a moment when it's not convenient. So better to do this on your own than wait until the moment comes that you have to basically being forced to lower your spendings. Coming back, these are the principles, and I think these are really important, and you can learn, of course, more about them at the Green Software Foundation. So that's one of my recommendations as well. If you want to get started, it's a really nice certification that you can get from the Green Software Foundation. And it's taking you only about one evening, but it's making sure that you have everything from the basics covered, that we are all using the same terminology, those kind of things. And making sure that we're not only going to talk about definition, but we all agree on the principles, on the practices, on the architectural choices that you can make. So I would really recommend doing this. And yeah, my certificate, I took it at the Linux Foundation, but if you're more into Microsoft solutions, because it's all one foundation, there's also a Microsoft certification with exactly the same content, but then you're Microsoft certified, basically. You can also just stack them and get all the certificates, but it's basically the same content. And that was my presentation. I don't know if we have time for some questions.